Probably they set their hair on fire.
Yeah, they put oil on their head and...
The story does not...
What is it? Was it like a candle on their head? Like,
You know, it can be anything you imagine. I
Because
think
like, imagine it's like you light up the wax and like come down on the
Okay. So we have the Spirit coming down. We have water. We have God's presence. We have Jesus in the midst. And then we have this voice from heaven that said, "This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased." And so when we hear God's voice from heaven, God is saying something special about Jesus. That Jesus isn't just any person or anyone, but Jesus is God's Son. And Jesus is somebody that God loves dearly and somebody he is well pleased with. So we hear God's voice in Jesus' baptism, just as when we read Scripture in our baptism, we hear God's voice speaking to us, calling us beloved, calling us children of God, and connecting us to God as he is connected to Jesus. So my last slide before we move on is, and I put it in my baptism, because I think baptism is a very personal thing, but it's also a very communal thing that we share together. But in my baptism, in your baptism, in my baptism, I receive a gift. You know, this is something that I don't have to earn. I don't have to do anything for. It's just a gift given to me of God's promises, God's love, God connecting me, calling me
Christmas.
his child of God. Yeah, God's gift. And so I receive a gift. And I'm washed. What do you do when you wash something? You clean it. Yeah, you make it pure. You make it without any stain. And then when God comes to us in baptism, God clothes us with Christ to make us clean. Just like you see the little babies when they're baptized, they have little white garments on sometimes. Yeah, that's kind of symbolizing that. Yes.
About the gift thing, like when I was baptized, I got like a cloth and then a shell and like a stand for the shell.
Yeah. Yeah, you do get little symbols to help you remember your baptism. And we'll talk about that in
I
just
don't
a
know
moment.
where my
Yes.
arm.
Go for it.
So, if you're not baptized, like, then what are you?
Are you a devil?
You're just not baptized. Christy,
Christy,
if you're not
Are you on the
baptized,
dark
you're
side?
not baptized. That's what you are.
But you say like,
You're not
Some
pure.
yeah,
You're not a child of God.
You're not a child of God. Isn't
like,
Okay.
it true that you can't go to heaven until you've been baptized?
it's okay, we will get through
Those
this.
are very good
Oh, wait,
questions.
You can't take confirmation.
Let me ask you one question real quick. So somebody who is baptized is standing right here. Somebody who is not baptized is standing right here. Are they both breathing?
Yes.
They're both alive.
Yes. That life and breath. I mean, the actual word for spirit in Greek is breath. So if someone has breath, they have the Spirit within them, God's Spirit. When we baptize, we do something as a ceremony, but we do something that says that in this water, in this word being said, in the Spirit being present, something holy is taking place. That God is setting us apart for a purpose in this world. And it's not to say that God's not setting the other person apart, but this is something that God does to give us identity for ourselves, but also identity as God's church. Well.
So when you get baptized, you get that candle, right?
Yes.
Okay, so why did you get the candle if you get baptized with water and that's fire?
Sure. What do you think light means? What is light?
Right.
A light?
Light through the path. Were you going to say something, Pastor Casey?
I just thought something with that symbol. You remember last semester we studied the Old Testament, and in that prayer, when the pastors are praying, watch next time someone's baptized. When we pour the water and then we have a prayer, there's a prayer that talks about a couple things from the Old Testament. Who was saved when God flooded the world and there was all this water? Who got saved on top of the water? Noah, okay? He got saved. He was saved from all that bad, wicked world. And then, when thinking about fire, when Moses led the people out of the slavery of Egypt, how did he lead them? By a pillar of fire. And they went through, what did he do with the water? He separated, so they went through the water and he saved them as they were walking through that water. So there was kind of both fire and there was water. And so when that happened, you know, when God decided on this baptism thing, he used things that people already knew about. They think fire, water, we think about other people who were saved. I just thought of that.
Sure.
You had that book. So listen next time. When we're baptizing someone, in that prayer, we talk about fire and water, both.
And also with the candle, we say Christ is the light of the world. That was the actual scripture passage. And so we give that light to those who have been baptized to say that that light is with you and in you now, and goes with you. And in terms of light, we're in the season of Epiphany right now, from January 6th all the way through February 13th, I think, or February 10th, which is a season of light. And Epiphany means appearance or manifestation. So light kind of helps you see things, right? And so Epiphany is a chance for us to see how God is working in the world. It kind of shines light on how God is working in the world. So we hear about Jesus' baptism. This Sunday we're going to hear about the wedding at Cana where they turned water into wine. So all these different ways that God is working in the world to show God's abundant grace, abundant gift for us. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so there's people before Jesus and stuff, and was there religion then? But I don't get, like, they didn't know about God at all.
Yeah, the Jewish people. I mean, that would be a whole. And we learned a little bit about that, or a lot about like that, a lot of that last semester in the Old Testament, about how God was walking with the people through the Exodus story, as Pastor Casey was saying, through the desert with that pillar of fire, and how God saved Noah and his family through the flood, through the boat, and how God's been acting and saving people through history, through water and through fire, and continues in this way through Christ and through our baptism to bring us into that same story that God has had for so many years. Okay? Yes. One more question. Okay.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
on the ark, why did God want everybody to die except for...
We're getting into some big questions here.
Because he was a good man.
I'll tell you. Let me show you one.
Simplicity.
Why did he only want to save a few people? Why didn't he want to save everybody else? Like,
Because those were
they were all
good
bad
people.
they hate us?
Bad.
Yeah, the world had turned very, very evil, and
So he just decided to kill all of them.
God had a, yeah, it was very. That's a very difficult story. Okay, so
It has nothing to do with that question. But it's one more symbol of baptism, which only people in this room get to wear. Pastor Howard and I, of course, coordinated colors today on clothes. We called in advance. But the clothes we wear on Sunday, that robe that we wear, that's a symbol of baptism. That and acolytes wear it too. So it came from a time when everybody used to wear that. 3rd century, 4th century, everybody wore the robe. That was their only kind of clothes. Then later, it developed into kind of a symbol. The clergy and the people who were up front kept wearing it. And if you ever notice sometimes, either when people are baptized as a baby or later on, a lot of times even as adults, they'll wear a white robe when they get baptized. It's a symbol also of being washed. And so when you're acolyting, you're not only setting fire to the candles, you're also symbolizing for everybody, along with the pastors up front, that we're all baptized. So you get to wear a symbol of baptism on behalf of everybody else, whatever you're out for. Is that right? Would that be right?
that'd be great.
That is excellent.
All right,
I just
one more question.
Wait,
Then we need to move on.
please, this is good.
Why are there like 5 stories about death in 2 Kings?
It's a very tough one. We're going to save that for the Old Testament discussion here. We're going to focus on baptism and the temptations real quick. But those are good questions. Real quick.
Okay, I got one more question. Okay, you haven't been baptized. Are you still allowed to act like? Because really you're wearing the robe of baptism, but if you haven't been baptized, then are you still allowed to act like? 'Cause it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if you haven't been baptized, still wearing the robe.
I think that would be a great chance to have a conversation with that person about what baptism means.
But
And why do we wear it? And why do we wear this white on?
It covers our because maybe our clothes
Are full of sin.
we wear the pasture wear.
But see,
We want to match.
are you still
You want to match?
You won't match.
Wait, but are you still if you're not baptized? Like, I'm baptized. But, like, are you still baptized?
I would definitely wish people to acolyte. And I
Even
think
if they aren't baptized.
it says something not just about our baptism, but it says something about God's grace too. And how God's grace is not just
So
for.
why do we wear a robe of baptism?
I love that.
If it's for
I think it's more than, it's also baptism, but I think it's a bigger symbol of God's grace too.
Then why don't we wear a robe of grace?
Well, oh, okay.
Tell us something about temptation.
Tell us something about temptation. I know we're tempted to move on. Okay, but real quick, just to sum up the baptism stuff, Jesus was baptized, and it tells us something about who he is, that he is God's son. And when we are baptized, it says something about who we are, that we are a child of God that's also beloved. Okay, so remember that as we go into the temptation here. So, the wilderness temptation of Jesus. What tempts you the most?
Oh, I got it.
Let's get anybody else who hasn't said anything in a little bit. Any new? What tempts you guys? What temptations do you face? Huh?
I got Joshua like
What do you face? What's your temptation? What tempts you?
Yeah, Ethan.
What tempts you? Money tempts us. Yeah.
Pizza.
Pizza can tempt us. Yeah.
Money.
Money. What tempts us? What tempts you in school?
Hard
the bad kids.
Matthew, what tempts you?
Challenges to my intellect.
Challenges to your intellect. Eric, what
The
tempts
bad kids at school that want you to do marijuana.
Oh, Eric!
Okay, so drugs can be a temptation. Okay, guys. Catherine, what tempts you? Okay, like electronics, we can be tempted to stay on our computers and our phones for probably more time than we should. One more.
Okay, Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum?
Yeah,
So what's
Channing Tatum.
that?
What is that? It's a person. Is that little washboard ads and the nice pecs?
Yeah. It's like the whole enchilada.
Yes, cute guys and cute girls can be a temptation too. So how do you respond to temptation? What are the ways we can respond to temptation?
Slap my hand.
You guys listen.
If it's bad, or you either avoid it if it's bad, or you go through with it if you really want to.
Okay, you can actually go through with it.
Like if it's illegal, don't do it.
If you're a bad kid.
Like if it's like computer games, don't do it.
So you can go through with it, or you can resist it. Eric,
Oh.
how do you respond to temptation?
Try to ignore it.
Try to ignore it. Okay, you can ignore it. All right, well, let's keep going here. So this is a bigger question here. How does knowing you are a child of God, this kind of goes back to our baptismal question, how does knowing that we are a child of God help us with temptation? How would you respond to that? Yes.
Well, if you're a child of God, you have more expectations, so it helps you with your temptations. Like, oh, I really want to do that, but I'm a child of God, so I can't do that.
It reminds you of something you're connected to, of your baptism. Yep.
Temptation is by the devil.
Temptation is by the devil.
Yeah. Like, the devil is like creating temptation.
Yeah, temptation never sounds like a good thing, does it?
No. Sometimes it does. Like
That's foods is temptation. Anybody else? How is being a child of God, how does that help you with temptation?
When I was growing up many years ago, we all had bracelets that we wore that said, "What would Jesus do?"
Oh, okay.
And so you could always, when you're in a situation, look at that bracelet, it would make you think.
I'm a redneck.
John, hear that? Have you ever seen the little WWJD little bracelet? What would Jesus do? It's a chance to pause when you're faced with something you're not sure what to do with and ask a question that may help you out. It may help you kind of not just think about it yourself, but it might bring you to a person to kind of help you talk the question out. So we're going to get back to that in just a second. I want to go through a few key words that are in Jesus' temptation in the wilderness. What is temptation? We never really touched on that. What is temptation? All right, I want some new art. How about you, Tiffany? What's temptation for you? Something that's taking you